Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, or Warshak if you want to call me by my in-game name, and we're going to be going over another monthly meta where we talk about the most popular decks in Hearthstone. Keep in mind, guys, what this video is trying to do is when you hit that ranked button and you queue into a ranked game, these are like 90-95% of the decks that you're going to be facing against. Obviously, I can't cover every deck that's ever going to be played in Hearthstone. That's just impossible, right? That's just a complete waste of time. What we want to do is cover, 90-95%. You get a good feel of what you're going to be playing against, its pros, its cons, and kind of what's in the deck list. Keep in mind, all the deck lists that I'm going to be showing in this video are my personal deck lists. If you have any disagreements with the deck list, or you just don't want to play a particular card, or you just don't like it, that's perfectly fine. They're my deck lists. You can make changes as you see fit. That seems to be a big thing in these videos. Is people like, oh, why do you have that card in here? It's just like, well, pay attention to the foundation of the deck, not necessarily one tech card I've included. So the first class we're going to talk about is going to be Priest, and more specifically the Meme Priest. This is a deck that actually rose very fast in popularity, and now it's kind of dying down with the release of another deck that we're going to get to a little bit later after, I believe, this next two. But this deck revolves around playing not so great creatures and then making them great with the ability to increase their HP with cards like the Divine Spirit and the Talon Priest. From there, you interfire it and then you swing for huge amounts because Priest is known for having very high HP minions. But in this particular deck, the high HP minions aren't actually Priest specific. We're using Ancient Watcher, which is a neutral, and another Humongous Rage Relief, which is a neutral. From there, normally these cards can't attack, but that's where the meme comes in. We silence them with cards like Purify, which is one of like the most hated card at the time, and then it actually turned into a pretty decent card with this deck. But again, this is more of like a meme deck more than anything. Not to say it's not good. It can still be used to climb ladder. I would have to say the difficulty of the deck, sometimes it can be really easy to play. The lines all line up perfectly and it kind of just makes perfect sense. Other games, it's a lot more difficult because, you might not get exactly what you need. So you kind of have to bob and weave until you can put the pieces together to actually get the combo off to be able to do, 20 plus damage in one turn with the Divine Spirit Interfire. Overall, the deck hasn't really changed much since it came out, and its goal is basically the same every single game, just trying to buff up a minion, increases HP, and then interfire it. So the next deck we're going to talk about is going to be Dragon Priest. It's a deck that, again, really hasn't changed a lot over time. There's some small integrations that have happened with people playing Elise, and of course, the Shadow Visions into Elise. That happened very soon after the expansion, but it didn't actually happen right away. The only other thing that's really changed about this deck is the Holy Nova. There's a lot of token Druid, a lot of token Shaman on ladder right now, and due to the fact that there is a lot of token, it makes Holy Nova a lot better than it used to be. And Potion of Madness is a card that sometimes it's really, really strong, other times it's not so strong. Right now I'm testing out just playing one Potion of Madness, but keep in mind, of course, you can run two. There's nothing wrong about that. You can, sub out a Bookworm or something. But overall, very curve specific deck. Most of the time you have a good turn one play into a turn two play into a Talon Priest on turn three, and that's just like one of the hardest opening games to get rid of for aggressive based deck, is just putting like 1 to 2 attack minions with like 5+ HP. I mean, that's just so annoying for any form of aggro deck. Against control, it's not as powerful, but definitely against aggro, it gives them a hard time. From there, your mid game, of course, revolving around the Twilight Drake, Draconoid Operative, and I mentioned this in the monthly meta before this. Again, Draconoid Operative really carrying this deck. Not to say that Lyra isn't a huge contributor to how powerful this deck is. Also with Elise into the Shadow Visions is really nice as well, but again, Draconoid Operative is just one of those cards that really sets this deck up and makes it as good as it is. If this deck didn't have the Operative, it would be okay, but I don't think we'd see it anywhere near the amount we're seeing it at all. Moving towards the next one, it's going to be the Control Priest, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one. It sucks because towards the end of an expansion cycle, which we're kind of at now, the decks really don't change a lot. There's just some minor tech changes that happen within the decks. But besides that, a lot of the decks have been solidified. But here's one that actually popped up relatively recently. and has found its way into the meta and is doing pretty good. I know my Control Priest looks a little bit different with the Darkshy Alchemist, the Akanai Soul Priest, and the Circle of Healing. These aren't really normal cards that we would see, but they're actually really, really good against any form of token or aggro deck, even mid-range. You know, this Akanai Soul Priest, Circle of Healing, no one's expecting it, and that's where it comes in clutch. On top of that, the Medivh with Free from Amber is just an insane combo. You drop 2 of those, and you're able to summon, you know, the card from Free from Amber, plus a random 8 drop minion, because of the Medivh staff. Plus, if you still have Medivh on the board, is absolutely insane. You still have the ability to go off with Lyra with the Radiant Elementals, and on top of that, you still have Elise with the pack. So the only thing you're changing around in this deck versus the Dragons is you have the same Elise core, the same Lyra core, but you're changing out, you know, Medivh, the Free from Amber, and kind of your mid game for more of a Akanai Soul Priest, Darkshy Alchemist, and Medivh late game. So just some slight modifications there, but this deck this deck's a lot of fun in my opinion, and is an up-and-comer. It's kind of interesting because normally there's not a lot of up-and-comers at all. All right, so the next one, actually the next class we're going to be talking about is Paladin, but more specifically Control Paladin. This is my Control Paladin list I've been running at the moment. It's been really successful for me. I've had higher than a 65% win percentage with it over the past 2 or 3 days, playing, you know, 25, 30 plus games. I know that's not a huge sample size, but the meta is constantly changing, so it's kind of hard to say what is exactly good right now. Could be really bad a week from now. I mean, I've played the same decks, you know, a month afterwards, and like they just don't do good at all, or all of a sudden they're really, really nice. So you could be looking at this deck and be like, Rob, well, what's its win condition? It's basically just outvalues your opponent. I mean, if you're playing against any form of aggro deck, throwing out a good Doomsayer or an Equality Wild Pyromancer and Equality Consecration can just win games from there. Against mages, Eater of Secrets is a great Tekken card. So you drop the Eater of Secrets, you know, when you're about to get lethal, and you can get a sneaky lethal in there. Against Tempo Secret Mage, it's really nice. They drop 2 secrets, you play Eater of Secrets, they concede on the spot. From there, your early game is fantastic. Stonehill Defenders, Wickerflame Burn Bissel, the Gluttonous Dude, Aldor Peacekeeper, Hydrologist, Informants. Like, this deck has, like, it's hard to play this deck and not have something to do in the early game and then not have something to do in the late game. Like, you have options. The only thing this deck doesn't have is draw, and that's where I've thrown in Harrison Jones and the Grim Street Informants, because those can actually give you card draw from other classes. And the Informants, they look silly, but you're going to have to play them and test them out. I found that they're really, really cool. No one plays them. I've never seen anybody play them in any deck, and I love the card. I mean, I saw it a couple times in Warrior. I think Fibonacci played him in Warrior, but nothing in Paladin. It's just been great. Plus the Stonehill Defender. I mean, this deck is just Control City, which is right up my alley. I love Control decks, so great deck. The next one's going to be a more aggro-based Paladin. We've seen this a lot on ladder. It's the aggressive Murloc Paladin, and it runs, of course, a bunch of one-drop Murlocs. Smugglers run to buff those. You use your hand, basically just throw up on the board, then you drop a Divine Favor. Hopefully your opponent hasn't done the same thing. They have, you know, 3, 4, 5, even 6 or more cards. From there, you basically refill your hand with a 3 mana, draw 4 or 5, and then you do the same thing. You throw up on the board again, hopefully cycle into another Divine Favor, and you just continue this until your opponent is dead. It does this with the ability of Murloc Synergy, so you've got Rockpool Hunter, which buffs basically whatever Murloc you want in your deck. Selfless Hero has to die. Everything else has to die first, and then the Selfless Hero, if your opponent doesn't want to give him Divine Shield, which is really annoying because they want to kill her, but she's ticking off for 2 damage. And this deck caps off at Sunkeeper Terran. We definitely can see the difference between this aggro Murloc and the Control Paladin. This doesn't even run Tyrion, you know, Light Lord. It doesn't even run the Trusty Steed, the 6 mana 2/6 buffer that gives you the 2/6 taunt after that. So very aggressive deck, but this gets the job done. You know, if you're not really a control player and you just want to grind ladder quick, this is one of those decks where you can just slam it in and knock out twice as many games. Even if you have a lower win percentage, if you're knocking out twice as many games, you're actually climbing faster. But you know, it's just not my style. So the next one we're going to take a look at here is going to be the Miracle Rogue. This is not a deck that has actually changed a whole lot. This is the same version we had, or I had posted last month, the same deck. As I make changes to the deck, I introduced it into our monthly meta, but nothing has changed with this deck. I'm still running the same list. It works just as well. The only thing that that you could tech in and out is the Eater of Secrets for the mages, depending on how popular they are, and you basically just put in another sap instead of an Eater of Secrets, or maybe another Fan of Knives, due to the fact there is a lot of token Shaman and Druid out there. So Blood Mage Fan of Knives is always the thing. And then for those of you who are unfamiliar with Miracle Rogue and kind of how the deck works, it goes by its name, Miracle Rogue. It doesn't really have like a win condition that you can see. It just kind of looks weird, right? Just a bunch of spells, some small minions, and then like 2 Arcane Giants. So by the time late game hits, your Arcane Giants roughly cost, 0 mana, most preferably, but most of the time like 1 to 3, and then from there you have cards like the Gadsden Auctioneer, which in one turn can draw you an insane amount of cards, but while you're drawing cards you also can play a good Edwin, which you can make huge. 10 plus Edwin wins the game. Also with the Questing Adventures, you basically are just buffing up those guys, and if you can't happen to win with your Questings or your Van Cleef, you have a backup Arcane Giant, and then you have your Vilefine Slayer and your Sherazin for the value of being able to basically get knock away whatever you do or do not want. But the main mechanic of this deck, which allows it to run, is the Gadsden Auctioneer. Without this card, this deck does not work. It's just one of those cards that you need, and it's crazy. Pretty hard deck to run, though. It's gotten easier over time to play this deck with the just overall, because Arcane Giants aren't like the craziest card. Like, you just play spells and it gets cheaper. It's not like Molten Giant where you kind of had to play around with your life points to play them at a particular time and get close to lethal. But overall, this deck is still pretty hard to play, much harder than the Aggro Paladin for sure. Moving on to the next one's going to be the Quest Rogue. I'm only covering this now because I'm sure it's going to be popular until the nerf. Hopefully, I mean, it announced, or Blizzard announced, it is getting nerfed. The quest is now going to require the minion to be played 5 times instead of 4. I highly doubt this deck will see a lot of play after that, but I figured I'd just mention it again until it gets nerfed, because it's going to be a popular deck. It still could be popular after that. I just don't think so. Sorry about the woohoo. That's just part of the follower animation. I don't know how to make it stop if I'm recording with OBS. But yeah, the deck revolves around playing the same minion 4 times. When that happens, the quest gets completed, they turn into 5/5s, and they smash your face. Very not so fun deck to play against, and I'm sure everybody here has played against it and does not like it. And yeah, just has to be in there because, again, it's one of the most popular decks. So moving on to Hunter, there's only one Hunter list right now that really is anywhere near viable, and that's going to be the mid-range Hunter list. This one looks a little bit different. The only inclusion that's kind of weird is the Flare, again, because of all the mages and paladins. Tons of fucking mages, so we got to tech against them, and then when we start teching against the mages will switch to something else, and we can start teching back out the Flares and stuff and the Eater of Secrets. But for now, the cards stay in the deck because they're too damn good. Deadly Shot's another one. A lot of people have been going in with the Hydras and a couple Miracle Rogues on ladder. They make a big Edwin. You just Deadly Shot it, no problem. Plus, it's not a 3-mana kill, not whatever you want, but most of the time kill whatever you want because you kill the minions next to it, so they only have that one big card on the field, and you can get a great Deadly Shot in. But besides that, the deck runs very similar to most mid-range hunters. You curve out with beasts. You got beast synergy with the Crackling Razor Maul and kill commands and things like Houndmasters. From there, you can see a little bit it being interesting with the Wardens. I really like double Warden in this deck due to the fact that when you play it, you cycle out 2 of your 1-mana minions out of your deck, and a lot of the 1-mana minions that you get are like Jeweled Scarab and Raptor Hatchling. Could be good because if a Raptor Hatchling died, it puts a 1-drop 4/3 in your deck, so you could potentially drawing into 2 1-mana 4/3s, which is fantastic. But if not, the Jewel Macaw is always a good one, and it also gets the top deck bad draws out of your deck, because if the Warden is pulling your 1-drops, that's a less likely chance that you're going to draw a 1-drop, and due to the Hunter's lack of draw, you kind of want to get all those bad draws out of the way and get to your Savannah Highmanes. So not a bad deck, very simple to play, not a whole lot of thought process. Costs 1,400 gold, and or dust, I should say. It's a very cheap deck to play, and it definitely can get you to some high ranks if you you go against the right classes. You play against Warrior, you play against Druid, some Rogues. You can pull off a lot of quick wins against them and really show them up, because this deck just pumps out a lot of damage with minions very, very quickly if you can get the ground rolling and the field control going. moving to our next list is going to be the Druid, but before I forget, I'm going to mention that Warlock is not in this monthly meta again. I got a couple questions in the last monthly meta of, hey Rob, where is Warlock? You left it out. I didn't actually leave it out, and I didn't forget about it. There's just no viable Warlock decks that I can mention right now. I haven't played against a Warlock in 2 months. Like, the class just doesn't exist. I have not queued into a Warlock in like 2 months. Not even one. Not even once. I can't even tell you guys. So that's why Warlock is not included. It's going to be the Jade Druid. This deck has been around a long time now, since the release of Mean Streets, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere because it's just a really powerful deck that counters other control decks very, very well, with the ability to always being able to summon Jades with cards such as the Jade Idol, with the mechanic of being able to shuffle 3 back in your deck. You combo that with Gadgetzan Auctioneer and Nourish and Fandral, and you've got yourself a party full of Jade Golems. There's a couple of Road to Legends that have me cycling between Jade Druid, Control Mage, and Control Paladin, and a few of these games that we play against controlled classes with this this Druid deck are just absolutely disgusting. Like, you just can't, there's no, you have to burn this deck out before it gets the ball rolling, because once the ball gets rolling, it's a snowball effect, and you're just gonna get steam, you can get plowed. I was gonna say steam plowed, but that doesn't make any sense, so I just changed it to plowed, and I think that sounded a lot better. Yeah, all right, so Jade Druid, not going to explain that much there. It's fairly cheap, 6,400 dust. You can get away with not running the, Primordial Drake, which is an epic. You don't need Fandral, but you do need Aya, and you don't really need Blood Mage. You can tag in like an Eater of Secrets or like a Galaka Crawler or something like that. So if you're looking for cheap decks, Jade Druid, Mid Hunter. I think Token Druid is pretty, or Token Shaman when we get there. Token Druid's also pretty cheap too, which we're going to talk about now. This deck is, I would have to say, it was Token Druid super popular, and then all of a sudden, this new Token Shaman is like taking over the whole ladder, man. Between Token Shaman and Quest Rogue and, Mages, there's not a whole lot else out there right now. It could be the end of the season hype of wanting to rank up quickly, or it could be what people are watching in tournaments, but this used to be, Token Druid used to be, when you played against Druid, 80% of the time it was this Token Druid deck, but now I would have to say it's like 60-70% Jade, and the other 30% Token, and if you're playing Shaman, that's where all the tokens went. But either way, this deck runs just like it used to. You summon a lot of early game minions that cost 1 mana, or if you don't do that, you innervate out something big like a Druid of the Claw or a Bittertide Hydra. From there, you kind of just take the board early on, deal a ton of damage, and burst your opponent out with overly statted small minions on the board. Plus, you get the ability to buff them with Mark of the Wild and Power of the Wild and Mark of Yashar, because there's beasts in the deck. And if that doesn't work and they clear your board, you drop a living mana, you Savage Roar, and you just win from there. So there's there's multiple win conditions of this deck that I like, and there's multiple starting turns that you have that you can are very flexible depending on what class you're playing against. So there's a little bit more decision in this deck than I originally thought when I was playing it, which gives it a little bit higher skill cap in my opinion. Not one of the easiest decks to play, but again, not one of the hardest decks to play. So looking at our next one is going to be Shaman. This is the Token Shaman, or I like to call it the Pokemon Shaman, because it evolves around evolving your minions, and that's very similar to Pokemon. Sorry if you can hear a humming sound. My dad decides he wants to use the garbage disposal right above my head, which is where the kitchen is located. But either way, this is our only Shaman deck, guys, and the only Shaman deck I'm gonna show, guys, because Elemental Shaman, I haven't seen the deck in over a month now. Same thing with Jade Shaman. I was playing Jade Shaman, and it just doesn't seem to be doing the trick. If you're gonna run a Jade deck, you can just run Jade Druid. It's gonna do a better job. And have a higher win percentage. If you're looking for something fun, of course, Jade Shaman is an okay deck to run, but strictly, it's just a worse version of the Druid at the moment, in my opinion. Maybe when the next set comes out and the rotation happens and the meta changes, maybe Jade Shaman can pop back up. But at the moment, this is currently the most popular Shaman list available, and it's super powerful right now. So again, it evolves around very similarly to the Token Druid that we just mentioned. It drops all these cheap minions early on. You got Primal Fin Totem, you got Fireflies, you got Galaka Crawlers, you got Stonehill Defenders. From there, you lead into cards like either Doppelganger Evolve or Thing from Below Evolve, and you're able to hit, some of these cards that you already obtain value from. So 3-mana Stonehill Defender, you get your taunt from it. It's a 3-mana 1/4, which is pretty understated for a 3-mana, and then you evolve it and you turn a 1-mana or a 3-mana 1/4 that generated you a taunt into a pretty good 4 mana. You get 4 mana 7/7 like Pavel did in the recent tournament. Man, is that guy so fucking lucky. But anyway, Doppelganger is, of course, kind of the main win conditions of the deck. Turn 6, Doppelganger Evolve is huge. From there, you either hit him with a good Bloodlust, or you can actually not even have to evolve in this deck. If you get like 4 or 5 minions on the board by turn 5, and you hit him with a cheesy Bloodlust, get him down to, you know, below 5 health, and you just hit him the next turn and kill him, or you hit him with a Jade Lightning, something like that, it works. But surprisingly, for as weird as this deck looks, and it's like, well, it doesn't look that crazy and that powerful, it's super fucking good right now. Like, you gotta try it for yourself, but this deck is super powerful right now. So heading to our next, it's going to be the Mage, but more specifically the Control Mage. This is my current Control Mage build. At first, this deck was not doing me justice. I felt like I was getting absolutely annihilated half the time I was playing, but it just took a lot of games to kind of understand the deck, when to burn face, when to play minions, when to go for value, when I need to draw, when do I board clear, how much can I take, you know, lining up lethal over a couple turns with Pyroblast, Fireballs, and Firelands, Portals, and things like that. So this is a very, very interesting, in my opinion, very hard deck to play because there's just every turn there's so many options, and on top of that you get the discover mechanic rolling, so you kind of have to play around cards that may not actually be in your deck, but decks cards you could discover that get reduced down by 2, so you can fit them into, you know, combos that you wouldn't normally be able to do. So just super cool deck. And I love control decks. If any of you watch any of my videos, you know I kind of stray away from the aggro decks, and I push towards the more mid-range to control decks. And this is just, if you love control, this is definitely a deck you're going to want to try out. The next one's going to be our Super Secret Mage deck. This is a deck that for a long time coming, I've been saying Super Secret Mage is going to be a thing. Super Secret Mage is going to be a thing. Finally, Super Secret Mage is a thing. And it's like a super cancer deck. I feel so bad. It's not like some cool skill cap, you know, deck that requires a ton of thought process. It does require more thought process than the aggro Murloc Paladin, but a lot of the times, if they just get a sick secret curve on you, you just can't do shit. So this deck revolves around being able to tempo out early, the Mana Worm, the Arcanist, the Valet. You hit them with the Mage into like a free secret, and then you hit an Arcanist. You have a counterspell down. They try to do something, they can't because it gets counterspelled. Your Arcanist goes to a 5/5. You drop like another counterspell. You drop him your entity. He gets buffed to a 7/7. They play a minion, or they get play a spell. They get countered again, and by then they've taken too much damage because this deck still runs the double Firelands Portal, double Fireball, double Frostbolt combo, along with the Primordial Glyph and the Valet to deal an insane amount of damage. Plus, you could be like, Rob, well, you know, why are you running Avian Watchers instead of the 6 mana 5/5 that when you play a secret it reduces by 2? You're more than welcome to take out the Watchers and put in that card. You'll answer your own question when you do that. You're gonna be like, wow, this 5 mana, this potentially a 5/5 without taunt versus a Pirate Warrior or a Token Shaman. I wish I had a 4/7 taunt that lines up really good against Priest and is a taunt minion because I'm a mage and can't heal. You know, there's certain situations where the Watcher's good. There's certain situations where the other card is good. I like the Watcher. So be it. And then the Tome, you'd be like, Rob, well, you're running a tempo deck. Well, why do you have Tome in the deck? Again, kind of a tech choice. I find that for as much aggro as there is on ladder right now, there's just as much control, and the Tome allows you to, with this deck, stand up against control with no problems, and even against aggro, sometimes you can fit in, you know, a Tome if you get the board early, which is what this deck does with cards like Mana Worm, Arcanist, Secrets, Counterspells, and, you know, Mere Entities and things like that. So it's weird as this deck looks, and for as like kind of not normal this looks as like a tempo Super Secret Mage, it actually works pretty damn well. But if again you don't like any of the cards, feel free to remove them. All right, so we're going to move on to Warrior. This is going to be our last class that we're going to cover, and unfortunately, it's one of the most boring at the moment. It's going to be the Taunt Warrior. Nothing has changed with this deck whatsoever. It got basically refined to its point within a month of the expansion hitting. It revolves around playing down Fireplume's Heart. From there, it says play 7 Taunt minions, gain a hero power that wins you the game, basically not instantaneously, but within the next couple turns, because it turns your hero power into sacrifice 2 mana, deal 8 damage to a random enemy minion or their face, and no deck can outvalue that. Not at all. So, very turtle deck. On curve, play taunt, play more taunts, get new hero power, smash button, win game. That's the extent of this deck. Unfortunately, it's extremely boring to play, it's boring to watch, and it's boring to cast. Moving to the next deck, another, I would have to say it's not as boring, which is really, really bad to say because it's Pirate Warrior. It's not a deck that nobody wants to see this deck unless you're trying to grind ladder extremely quickly and get those really fast-paced wins in there, because this, again, I don't get mad for people running Pirate Warrior at all. You know, you have to, some people are looking to get on ladder and play as many games as fast as possible because they don't have all the time in the world to play. Totally understand that, and they just want to win. You play yourself some Pirate Warrior. It's a cheap deck, does the job, and it's, in my opinion, a lot more exciting than Taunt Warrior, which is really, it hurts me to say, but I mean, at least it has something more going on than just play taunts and smash a 2-mana deal 8 damage button. But yeah, so for those of you unfamiliar with Pirate Warrior, just on curve, play pirates. There's a ton of pirate synergy. Through as much damage as you do with creatures, you're going to be able to do with your weapons, with your Fiery War Axes and your Arcanite Reaper, because you can upgrade them with not only the card upgrade, but through your, what's her name? I don't play this deck, not South Sea Captain, or did I miss, did she not? Oh, Bloodsail Cultist, sorry about that. I don't play this deck enough or pay attention to the cards anymore to remember her name. But yeah, you just deal a ton of damage. It's got huge burst damage. In most games, they're over by turn 5 or 6. You either win or you lose by turn 5 or 6, and you play 5-minute games or less. And most of the time, you're able to win more than you lose. It's pretty easy deck to play. For the most part, you know, there are some turns that require a little bit more thinking than others, but a lot of the times it kind of plays itself, which if you play the deck, you can agree to that. Like, a lot of the times you know you've broke back the shit out of someone with this deck. So with that, that's going to wrap up our most popular decks of the month. Again, guys, towards the end of an expansion is where it kind of doles out the most because there's not a whole bunch of new decks being introduced. But with the upcoming expansion being announced next month, well, I should say this month on the 7th, we'll be able to take a look at some of these new cards, see what the new expansion is, and start, you know, theory testing new decks, discussing the new cards and seeing where they fit, and then from there, a month after that, we'll have the new expansion most likely out, which where the monthly meta there will be absolutely crazy. Another note, guys, when the new cards do arrive, I can't do a monthly meta of the cards that just came out right away because I have no fucking clue what the most popular decks are. So normally when a new set comes out at the beginning of a month, I will delay the monthly meta for a week or two until the meta at least not solidifies, but we can kind of see a trend. From there, I'll release it, and then 2 weeks later, I'll kind of solidify the list even more. I know that has nothing to do with this video, but a good indication of what to expect in the next, you know, month or two, for those of you who watch this regularly. So with that, thanks for watching. And if I happen to miss anything out, or you just want to further add some input on what I've expressed and explained thus far, the comment section is there for you guys. Always love to see your comments. For the newer players who are looking for a little bit more information, the comment section here is always a great place to go. So as always, I'm Robert Warshak, and happy whatever the hell day it is.